So today's ad slot isn't sponsored. Instead, I want to tell you about a charity I work with who could really do with some extra help right now. I'd like you to contemplate for a moment about how you feel when you're really hungry, or if you have a child, how they behave when they're hungry. Terrible, right? Hunger affects everything: behavior, mood, concentration, ability to learn. A hungry person, and especially a hungry child, isn't anywhere near their best self. Magic Breakfast provides free, nutritious breakfasts to over 1,000 primary, secondary, and ASL special educational needs schools across the UK. Every school day, they offer breakfasts to up to 200,000 children. But it's also not just about the food. I've visited their schools, and their clubs also serve as a place for children to come together, get support from teachers, catch up on homework, relax with friends, even get their hair braided. How needed is this charity? Sadly, very, and more so than ever. According to government statistics, before COVID, around 1.7 million children in the UK were living with food insecurity, meaning that they're at risk of hunger in the morning. That number is now looking closer to 4 million. And of course, with the cost of living crisis, it's just rising. I volunteer with Magic Breakfast. I'm on the development board, and I know the money goes where it's needed to supporting children, as well as lobbying for policy change to encourage the government to step in. Magic Breakfast actually always say that their ultimate aim is to make themselves obsolete, to end child hunger for good. If you have the ability to support a hungry child, please do check them out. It's magicbreakfast.com. Thank you.
I constantly kind of get asked, why do you lean into change? And I think the reason I do is because one of the worst changes that can happen in your life happened to me, losing the ability to mobilize, to feel 2/3 of my body, to, be the obvious one is I'm not able to walk, but there's so much more that I lost in my crash that, it kind of, all of that happened. And yet I found all this amazing joy and purpose and meaning. And so I kind of almost think, wow, if you can learn that much from something so bad, what are the possibilities there? So I'm always looking for new ways to see the world and new things that I can grow from. So stepping out of my comfort zone, for example, that's a real thing. I think as a paraplegic, it's not that hard to do that. A lot of things are, out of the comfort zone when you're a wheelchair user. So I do tend to seek that out because I'm like, right, what's the worst that could happen?
Welcome to Priorities, the podcast about the things in life that really matter. I'm your host, journalist and coach Lily Silverton, and each week, along with a roster of incredible guests, I'll be exploring how priorities inform and transform our lives, sharing mindset tips, strategies, tools, and inspiration to help you prioritize your own life. We'll be covering what we think is important and unimportant, what we'd like to work on a little more, and the moments that changed our priorities and lives forever. I hope you enjoy. My guest today is broadcaster, TV presenter, and disability advocate Sophie Morgan. Voted as one of the top 10 most influential people with a disability in the UK, Sophie is one of the only television presenters with a disability in the world. As well as fronting shows such as Loose Women, Living Wild, and the Paralympics, Sophie makes award-winning current affairs documentaries, travel programs, and consumer affairs shows, including Dispatches and Unreported World. Sophie recently launched the #RightsOnFlights campaign to raise awareness around the treatment that those with disabilities face when flying. Her first book, a moving, funny, and thought-provoking memoir, Driving Forwards, came out in paperback last month. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you very much.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I've read your book, Driving Forwards, and have so many questions. But I'm going to start with the one which I ask all my guests at the beginning, which is, are you a routine kind of person?
Do you know, I wish I could say yes to that. I think my mission in life is to one day be able to say, yes, I have a routine. But the short answer is, no, I don't have a routine. I wish I did. The nature of my life and my job and everything that I'm doing at the moment means that routine often gets thrown out the window. So there's certain habits I have that I keep daily, but when it comes to routine, I struggle.
Your routine is no routine?
Almost, unfortunately.
What are the habits that you have?
So I tend to start my day in the same way. I always try and wake up at the same time, and I'm I'm a big fan and ambassador for a brand called Simprove, which is a probiotic drink which I have routinely every day. And then it's sort of like a kind of half hour moment of calm in the mornings. I always try and just take a moment, just wherever I am, just to take that time, not to doom scroll, not to get on my emails, all of those things that are really easily done, I suppose, when you're super busy, especially when you're in different time zones as well, when people might be awake and you're just waking up. So I kind of try and keep that half hour free and then just slowly ease myself into the day. And those kind of morning habits tend to be things like I'll listen to music. I've started writing quite a lot, or I'll try and read in the morning. I'm trying to do creative things in the morning as opposed to sort of reactive, more stressful things. It tends to set me up a little bit better. And then, I try and eat at the same time and I try to go to bed at the same time. Those are my sort of loose habits, and exercise every day as well. But I'm being kind to myself on that front. If it doesn't always work out, that's okay.
It's part of taking care of yourself, right?
Trying to.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good routine to me, personally, where you are in the world. Sophie, I'm going to kick off with the question, have your priorities ever shifted in an instant?
100%. So when I was 18 years old, I was paralyzed in a car crash, and everything changed completely overnight in an instant. I mean, of course, that kind of gradual change did take some time too, in the sense that I woke up in hospital after the car crash and came to terms, I suppose, in the next sort of 3 months with the physical changes in my body as I was being rehabilitated at the spinal hospital in North London. And so there was sort of, in that moment, there were changes that were seismic in my outlook and in my attitude. But then also, I think when I kind of went back out into the world as a wheelchair user, and the subsequent journey, that was 20 years ago now, Lily. So that journey has been long. And there has been a constant shift in my perception, constant change. So I live with change, I think, and I embrace it. And I also lean into it. So I'm always looking for a perspective shift. But yes, that moment that everything changed was definitely in my car crash and in the subsequent sort of life-changing injury that I had. It shifted my perspective into just being incredibly grateful for surviving, because it was very nearly a fatal injury. But I survived that. And I think then soon the other pieces of the puzzle kind of slotted together. So my gratitude for my family, for example, my support network around me, that had been very much taken for granted when I was younger. And then in the aftermath of the crash, that became the most important thing to me. So that value for family, for friends, for the small things, just being able to, my mum had just bought a puppy and I was able to hug that puppy. And that, I can't tell you what that meant for me in the, lying, having just learned that I was never going to walk again. Just little things like that. So my perspective became very, very different from what I was before, which was quite a kind of, I suppose, quite selfish, quite wild and quite kind of headstrong young teenager. And then soon after, the crash, I became kind of just a little bit more fearful about what was possible for my life. And so I hung on to things that kept me safe. And then I soon became grateful for, being able to get into a wheelchair and being able to get out and about. And then learning that I could drive again, and then learning that I could travel again. And, that slowly, every time I learned something new about what I could do, despite being paralyzed, that shifted my perspective as well on everything. So yeah, it's been a constant journey of awakening.
And do you still have that now? Do you still
Always.
That?
Always. Yeah. I mean, I have a real addiction to learning and to changing and to seeing things differently. I think because I should try and clarify why, because I constantly kind of get asked, why do you lean into change? And I think the reason I do is because one of the worst changes that can happen in your life happened to me, losing the ability to mobilize, to feel 2/3 of my body, to, you know, be the obvious one is I'm not able to walk, but there's so much more that I lost in my crash that, you know, it kind of, all of that happened. And yet I found all this amazing joy and purpose and meaning. And so I kind of almost think, wow, if you can learn that much from something so bad, what are the possibilities there? So I'm always looking for new ways to see the world and new things that I can grow from. So stepping out of my comfort zone, for example, that's a real thing. I think as a paraplegic, it's not that hard to do that. A lot of things are, you know, out of the comfort zone when you're a wheelchair user. So I do tend to seek that out because I'm like, right, what's the worst that could happen? It can only be good, right? I mean, that's kind of how I take it. So, I mean, I've been wrong. Don't get me wrong. There've been times when I've decided to do stupid things and things have gone terribly wrong, and I've gone, oh, that was a bad idea. Circle back. Let's start again. But I do really enjoy kind of working out how I can see new things, like whether it's meeting new people from backgrounds that I don't come from, or whether it's going to places that, you know, are completely different to where I grew up or where I live now. Or, you know, all of those things I do. I literally live for it.
What do you recommend to someone who maybe doesn't live for it but would like to more? Do you have like a piece of advice or something you say to yourself?
I have this, I don't know if it's helpful because I feel advice sometimes is often given, but it should be taken relatively, you know, because I think there's a lot to be taken into consideration. And I check my privilege a lot when it comes to recommending and advising, and, you know, because it's very easy for me to say, you know, I'm a wheelchair user and I could say, oh, as a wheelchair user, you could do it too. But the fact is, if you don't perhaps have the privilege of having a support network, or to having, I'm very lucky I have a job, and, you know, a lot of disabled people are struggling to get into employment for so many reasons, or I have a wheelchair that suits me and is lightweight and works. So I have that privilege. So I'm very hesitant to just go, right, if I can do it, you can do it. But what I would say is, what I've learned over the years is, because I live with a lot of physical limitation, because I'm constantly kind of, I suppose, not only just internally, but externally reminded of the things I can't do. So, you know, like I said, I can't walk. So it's not like I can go for a hike, right? But I will constantly go, okay, what are the things I can do? And if I know, right, okay, I can't go for a hike, but I could get into an adapted mountain bike and wheel myself off into the mountains, then I'll go, right, I can do that. Now, if the thing that's getting in the way of me doing that is my fear of doing it, which is imagined. Fear is imagined. It's not a physical barrier. It's an attitudinal barrier. If I can break that fear down, then that means I'm a little less disabled. If I can't break my fear down, then I'm doubly disabled, if that makes sense. So it's this constant, like, if you've got a fear of something, I really ask yourself, how can you break it down? Because the fear is imagined. I think I'm right in saying there's only two things I wrote this in my book, two things that we're born innately with fear of. One is falling and the other is loud noises. I think they're intrinsic fears. The rest are all learned behaviors, I think. Obviously, some are very rational, for sure. But if you just got a fear of, I don't know, being judged, or a fear of failing, or a fear of going into a place and it kind of, you're not feeling welcome, that's all imagined. It's all imagined. And if you can overcome that, then your world opens up massively. So that's been my constant journey, is going, right, what am I scared of? Do it. And your world will get bigger. It's that kind of thing. I did it with my job. You know, I went into live broadcasting on television. I mean, I presented the Paralympics in my first live broadcast in Rio to an audience of millions of people. I don't know how I did it, but I remember my friends saying, what are you doing? And I was like, well, the reason I'm doing it is because I'm really scared of it. I've been given the opportunity to do it and I'm terrified. So that's ridiculous. If I say no, the only reason I'm not doing this amazing thing is because I'm getting in the way of myself. It's not my disability. So that's kind of been my, it's not advice, but if it's anything to learn from, that's how I approach things. Just go, right, am I getting in my own way? If so, let's sort that out.
And then that, of course, expands your comfort zone. It sounds like quite trite and embroider it on a pillow, but it's really, really
Yeah,
impactful.
you hear all that stuff, don't you? The cliche, nothing grows in the comfort zone and all of these things. But for God's sake, it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. But again, I check the privilege because it is a privilege to be able to have the confidence to step outside of a comfort zone. And I've worked out what my safety net is. So I'm constantly expanding that comfort zone. But I'm very aware of the privileges that I have and that make it easier for me to do so.
Mm. So what are some of your priorities aside from stepping outside your comfort zone?
So it's a great question. I think it shifts all the time. So I'd say today, my priorities are making change, both to myself and to the wider world. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We just lost, in the disability justice movement, we just lost a leader in our movement. She was an American woman named Judy Heumann, and she recently passed away. And it's left a big gap in our community, I think. And a lot of us are responding with, gosh, what do we need to do in Judy's name? That kind of what work is left to be done? Because certainly it's not an equal world yet for disabled people. So there's a lot of change that needs to be had. So I'd say, yes, change constantly to myself and to the world. I'd say purpose is a priority, constantly feeling like I've got a purpose. And I have to say priority, it sounds really trite, but just to be happy, just to have a good time. I'm not very good at kind of suffering through things unless there's a reason to. Don't get me wrong, I suffer and I struggle and I work hard and things are tiring and difficult and I certainly complain about things, but if I'm really hating something, I'll stop it and change it, because I think having nearly died all those years ago, I'll never tolerate a life that isn't, kind of almost in gratitude for that fact that I didn't. So I owe it to myself to just be happy. So yeah, it's priority. Be happy or content or whatever word you want to use. just have a smile. Wake up going, yeah, cool. I'm up for today.
Yeah, and it's like there's no endpoint happiness. It's just the general, as you say, like contentment, joy.
Yeah, and that shifts. That really shifts. Sometimes that could be like, do you know what's going to bring me happiness today? Doing nothing. Or do you know what's going to be happiness? I want to change the world today, actually. It varies. It varies.
Are you good at doing nothing?
I'm terrible. I'm really terrible. People always ask this question, and there's such a thing about, self-care, rest. And I'm like, people say it to me all the time, rest. I'm like, yeah, no, I really have got too much to do. And I love it. I love what I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, certainly I need to rest. And I get dragged into restful spaces by my friends and family, and they sort of sit me down and go, stop. But I think because I'm really purpose-driven, I don't really enjoy the stopping all that much. But my body will certainly say, right, no, you can't. No, body's said enough. I mean, I'm dragged, like this month alone, I've dragged myself to 3 or 4 different countries. I'm constantly moving things and around for work. I'm taking like long days and not a lot of sleep. I'm there's certainly a lack of balance at the moment, but at the same time, I'm waking up super content and purposeful and all of those things. So why would I rest? I'll rest when I need to, and I think, I don't know. Well, it's a complicated question to ask. I think as well, I'm motivated by the fact that I've been given an opportunity recently to highlight some of the issues that are facing disabled travellers. And it's kind of landed on my lap. Like I didn't actually, it sounds like it's opportune. I mean, it's come to me. I mean, the opportunity to make change. I've been struggling with airlines and travel, and basically British Airways broke my wheelchair recently, and a campaign has started off the back of it. Now, I didn't intend for that campaign and I didn't plan for it, but it's happening. And I don't really have the opportunity to go, do you know what? I'll just leave it for now. I'm a little bit tired. I'm like, no, there's a campaign happening and I am going with it. But on top of all my other work that I'm doing, so it's almost like I don't really have much choice at the moment. I don't know how you be an activist and an advocate and then rest a lot. But I'm sure someone listening to this will have an opinion. So if someone's got an idea, then I'm open to listening. But at the moment, I'm cool. It's fun.
How do you recharge?
I plug in with my pals. I listen to really good music. I exercise. I try and exercise every day. And how else do I recharge? I try and sleep. I'm not very good at sleeping, but if I can, that's a good recharge. How else do I recharge? I think that's it, really. Yeah, friends and family, sort of switching off from, because a lot of my friends and family aren't involved in my work. And so I can just go, right, what are you doing? Tell me about your life. What's happening with your dog? How are the kids? I switch into their lives, and that's me just switching off. So that's a recharge. And then also, yeah, exercise and stuff like that for all the reasons that we know.
That's your form of rest then?
I think so. I have a complicated relationship with the word rest, because when I was in my early 20s, I was forced onto a prolonged period of bed rest. It's what we call bed rest, and it sounds very peaceful, and everyone's like, oh, that sounds nice, I'd love bed rest. But for me, it was like torture, because I had to lie on my stomach for the best part of 3 years, because I was waiting for a wound on my right bum cheek to heal, and I couldn't sit in my wheelchair till it had healed. So that kind of prolonged, enforced, bedridden bed rest, lying on my stomach day in, day out, almost every day, for the best part of 3 years, means that if I'm not having to do that because my skin is intact, my body, I'm literally touching wood right now, my body's well, I'm like, go, just go, don't rest. So any therapist listening to this will understand that I have a problem there with rest. And that's why, but it is what it is. So
well, you're definitely not the only one with a problem with rest. I think I've got it as well. And
we know why, right? We know why.
Yeah, we like to keep going.
And it's a very ableist attitude. It's a very toxic attitude. It's born from so many, capitalists. We could go into it, couldn't we? But at the end of the day, for me, I've reconciled it because I know I'm working towards something that really means a lot to me. So it's not like I'm not resting and I'm doing a job I hate, or I'm not resting and I'm struggling in a relationship that I wish I wasn't in, or something. Do you know what I mean? I reconcile it, but complex.
Hey, if you're enjoying the themes in this podcast and want to delve a bit deeper into prioritizing your own life, come on over to my Substack, Prioritize This, where I release weekly essays, voice memos, and coaching questions on priorities, habits, values, and generally the stuff that makes for a better life. Search Prioritize This on the Substack website or app. It is complex. So that the part of your book where you talk about the period of bed rest, I found so moving. And I was wondering, did you have any mental processes that you used during that long time? That
I look back on it and I don't know is the answer. I'm kind of like, how did I do that? But it hasn't been the only time that I've had to go on to bed rest again, unfortunately. The wound I was talking about kind of left a scar on my bum cheek, and given that I'm sitting on my bum all day long as a wheelchair user, I'm prone to it breaking down or banging it on something if I transfer from my chair into something else badly, and it can flare up. So I've had prolonged periods of bed rest since then, and the coping mechanism is always the same. It's the sort of, I start off going, I've got this, right? I'm going to use this time. I schedule my day. Bear in mind, I'm not able to literally get out of bed unless I'm going to the toilet. Otherwise, it's just lying on the bed. I can't even wash, really. I mean, a bed bath. But I lie there and I kind of schedule my day, and I get really structured. And I try to, maintain however I can my work and whatever. So I stay productive, and I, get to the end of the day and I allow myself, now I'm going to watch a film, or I don't lie there all day watching telly or something. That really doesn't help me. But after a month of that, I start to lose my motivation. Then I start to sort of just gaze out the window going, what the hell is this life? I can't get outside. I can't go anywhere. All of the self-care tips that you get from all these wellness experts, again, check their bloody privilege. It's all go for a walk and, be in nature. And you're like, yeah, no, we don't all have that privilege. So I get in those situations quite resentful of the kind of, where do I go with this? What do I do? I tend to listen to music. I tend to escape into music. I then tend to draw and paint. however I can. Often that will involve like putting a canvas underneath the bed. And then I just sort of lean over the side of the bed and paint a bit if I can. It gets a bit uncomfortable though, or I draw, which is always a real escape. Art has always been my escape route. And yeah, then after, if it depends how long it's going on, if it's 6 months of it, I eventually just start to get really depressed and then just kind of go zombie land. I just don't really know what to do. I kind of lie there going, oof, I can't do this. And eventually, knowing it will pass, I start plotting things. Then I get to the end and I go, right, what's next? Where am I going to go when I get off this? What am I going to do? And then I start getting excited about planning. So then I just plan, and plot and dream and fantasize about what's going to happen when I get off the bed rest. And then the minute I do, I don't stop. So yeah, it's a lot.
So important for the brain to have something to look forward to.
Always, absolutely. And that's how I live life, I think, really, is constantly like, where is my next exciting point, whether it be a work goal or a trip or somebody's party or birthday, there's something to just kind of put in the diary and go, yeah. Because there's that feeling of like, when you're in the tricky stage, you're like, oh God, where's the end? Where's the end? And I think as somebody who lives with a disability that's never going away, that it doesn't change, that it's not going to get fixed or anything. My spinal injury is set and has not changed in 20 years and will not. I have that sense of permanence that I'm like, oh God, it's never going to end, because that's how my body is. When I'm in the struggle, I kind of get a bit scared. I can't see an end point. So I have to set an end point and go, no, it's all right. Your disability, your paralysis won't end, but various things, other parts of your life will end. Bed rest will end, for example, and the wound will fix and you'll be able to get up again, or whatever it is, the mental health problem you're dealing with at the time will end and you'll get through it. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
What's something that's not a priority for you, Sophie? What can you care less about?
At the moment, relationships actually with men. I'm really like park them, because I've been in them long since my injury, almost 20 years. I've had various relationships, and I've really, good and bad relationships. One of the last ones was just really bad. Not the last one, the one before it was really, really bad. And I noticed that I let myself go quite a lot in a relationship, and I kind of prioritized them so much that to the detriment of me and my life and everything. And so I broke up with my last boyfriend, and my life has just gone bonkers in the best way, because I'm focusing on myself and on my life and on everything I want to do. I think my identity was very much tied up with being a girlfriend and being a partner, and society sort of almost saying, as a disabled woman, it's almost you're desexualized and you're not considered the same as other women. And I wanted to try and prove that I was, and I think that was for myself more than anything. But I really did, identify with it. It mattered to me that I had a boyfriend and a partner. But now it just doesn't. I'm so wanting to just be by myself and do my thing. In fact, I recently got a tattoo, which is by, myself. Because I'm like, my life is made by myself. And I want to be by myself. I want to do things by myself. And that won't be forever. But for now, it's just not a priority. Everything else is. And don't get me wrong, I sometimes wobble and go, gosh, it'd be lovely to have a partner. But at the other times, I'm like, no, the way I approach relationships is just, it would be detrimental right now. I've got too much other stuff to do. So I just want to not prioritize that, and just leave it to the side for the moment. I'd love to have a healthier relationship with relationships and bring them into my life without prioritizing them too much and shifting what matters. But I tend to put them at the top of the pile. And at the moment, I'm like, no, I don't want to put them at the top of the pile. I want to put my work and my life at the top of the pile. And then my health, and then my wealth, then all these other things, my development, those things need to come first. And if I could pop them in the bottom, but who wants to be popped in at the bottom? Nobody. Oh, that sounds a bit weird. Who wants to be placed at the bottom of the list of priorities? Nobody does. So that's the thing I need to navigate a bit more healthily. And I haven't got those skills yet. So I'm just not prioritizing.
And you can't do everything. It sounds like you feel like you freed up a lot of energy and time and resources that you were giving away to other people for yourself.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it does.
That have happened as a result of that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's almost like if there's a trajectory, I'm on the up. I'm certainly on the up. And I don't know if that would get interrupted if I suddenly went, I feel attracted to somebody and I love somebody and I want to keep them and I want to cultivate that. I'd probably just give them too much energy and I'd get knocked off course. That's just how I am. I would not say that's what all women are like, or certainly, what all people are like. That's what I'm like, and I just don't want to at the moment. So that's not a priority.
What's something you would like to prioritize more?
I'd say time with my best girlfriends. I wish I did that more. At the moment, I'm not doing it enough. I drop in, as in like I check in and we catch up, but quality time with my best girlfriends and boyfriends, I really wish I could prioritize more, but they also understand. They get it. They're like, they know that I love them and I want to, be there for them. But at the same time, I'm quite selfish at the moment. And I'm just doing that because I have to, because it's like, it's making me so happy. So it's fine. It's not a big issue. But I think for me, I feel this guilt of like, I wish I'd just made a bit more time for my best pals, but it's okay. We're working it out.
On the back burner. So, when you've got a bit more time, that's like,
it's just so hard, isn't it? When you're not, when somebody knows you're not prioritizing them, it's a horrible feeling. But I think my friends know so well now that it's not personal. It's because I'm on a mission and I've got such purpose at the moment with what I'm working towards that they know not to take it personally. And they do. I know that full well, but I still feel bad. I'm like, I want to be your best, but I want to be the best friend I can be. And that's quite a hard thing to do when you're juggling other things. But I feel it in the same way in reverse, when my friends have had children and their priorities shift and I'm not top of the pile. It's just the way it goes, isn't it? Life happens and friendships get shifted around in the pecking order, and that's okay. That's okay. It's just, you still feel that guilt, don't you? You feel that guilt, yeah.
And then the good ones last. They, go back and forth.
Yeah, that's it. That's
together, you drift apart.
And I think that's the litmus test. Often, as you get older and you get into adult life, is who can sustain these relationships without it being the strain of, why aren't you thinking about me first, or why? And I don't want to talk about your kids today. I want to talk about you or something. You just have to recognize that priorities change for everybody. And I think because I chose not to have children and I don't really want them in my life, I sometimes kind of have that struggle with my friends who do, and they prioritize that. And I'm like, really? What about your life? But then they judge my choices and flip, what about your family life? And do you know what? So it's so easy to judge, but I think that's those, I don't mean in my life, I mean for everybody. I think it's so easy to judge other people's life choices, but as women, we have certainly got to just accept that that's the best thing about being a woman is the freedom of choice to do what you want to do when you want to do it. If we've got that, we're winning. So yeah. But yeah, to your point, to your question, I think the priority, something I'd like to prioritize more is probably the way I spend time with my friends, but that's okay. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can send them this so they can hear you say it.
That's true. That's a great idea.
You guys, I'm thinking of you. Finally, Sophie, have you got anything you want to share or shout about before we say goodbye?
Good question. No, I don't. We covered everything. Thank you for plugging my book. It means the world when people spend time with my story. It means everything. So if anyone's listening to this,
I loved reading it.
Really?
Funny. It was really funny. We've also got the same references because I'm 1984, so a lot of the same musical references and all of that. But I think anyone of any age would just love it because it's funny and honest and like heartbreaking, but inspiring. Although you probably had enough of that word. in your life?
No, I love it. I'm really grateful. Thank you. I just, anytime someone says, "Oh, I've read your book," I'm like, well, really? Okay, tell me, what did you think? Because it's just, it's the choice to spend however many hours with somebody, and it's such a, I find that such a, you prioritized, again, it's like talking about priorities, that you've decided to put me in there, and it means so much. So I think that's the only thing I would add. But otherwise, thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope everyone who listens to this prioritizes reading your book. Really
that's a good shout out.
Thanks so much, Sophie. Take care.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of Priorities, I'd really appreciate it if you could make it your priority today to hit subscribe and also rate and review, as this helps other people find it. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.